Thanks, Annie, for the introduction. Before we go into the core part of the discussion, let us all start on a lighter note. Here is my rapid fire session with the panelists. One of the iconic sporting moments that we recently had is the 3-2 victory of Manchester City. It's probably a last moment sealing the Premier League football. So here is my initial question to all of you, and I'll start with you, Rahul. Do you engage with Premier League football, apart from the live matches that happens during the weekends?
I think by that, if you mean, I engage in their digital footprints, like their fantasy sports, their games, and especially mobile games. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, besides that, there's also merchandise. But yes.
Great. Divya, your answer? Like, do you interact with Premier League apart from watching the live matches?
No, I don't actually. I'm not a big fan of football. So yeah, it's about watching the match with my folks around, but that's about it.
Great. Ryan, your answer to this?
I did up until about week 3 when my fantasy team was no longer in contention, and I'll admit I haven't touched it since.
Great. Hishank, what about you?
Well, I'm from cricket. I only follow cricket. So yeah.
So let me tweak the question then. Do you follow Premier League match, Indian Premier League cricket matches apart from the live matches that happens in the month of April and May?
Well, absolutely. We extensively cover any format of cricket. So yeah.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Lokesh, your answer to this. You can take cricket, Indian Premier League cricket or English Premier League football, but do you interact with these properties apart from watching the live matches?
It's a good question, but maybe a wrong person to ask this question because we are from the digital sports, which is esports. So largely our engagement in the terms of or with these kind of properties is, for example, while we're talking about football, so we have Pro Evolution Soccer as a game and then FIFA as a game. And very recently, as a federation, we did the team selection for FIFA as a game title for Asian Games. Unfortunately, Asian Games got postponed, but yes, definitely.
Great. Let's go through this for one more time. This another rapid fire question. Here, I would like to know from you, all of you, which is your favorite TV show? It can be a scripted show, it can be a non-scripted show. Come on, Divya, let's start with you this time.
I think I'm going to give you the most boring answer. It is Friends. I can watch Friends any time of the day, any day of the week. Yeah, I think that's, like I said, most people's favorite show. So yeah, I think it's a boring answer, but it is Friends.
But tell me something, apart from watching the episodes, is there any other mode of interaction with the property?
Once I finished the show or the season, though I still wanted to keep in touch with the characters, and I was very fascinated by the whole show. So I think what I did was maybe follow like a subreddit or follow like Instagram pages, and that's about it. That where content creators were posting stuff, and yeah.
Great. Rahul, your favorite show?
Sure, The Mandalorian, and of course they have everything related to characters showing up in games and merchandise again. So I definitely interact with that offline.
Great. Ryan, your favorite show?
I'm with Divya. I've got to go Friends. Boring answer, but it's too good of a show to choose otherwise. Yeah, exactly. And similarly, I would interact with the show offline in really any capacity that was available, sort of following, predictions from one season to the next, or if there were while I was in New York, there were pop-up events where they recreated sets from the show, like the coffee shop, and I would go check that out. So certainly still am a big fan and would find ways to interact with the characters and the IP.
Great. Hishank, your answer, your favorite show? It can be scripted, non-scripted.
Well, honestly, I'm not a TV person, so I mean, I prefer channelizing my energy in the gym. So I'm more into following athletes and sports persons, or I would say Mr. Olympias, and also I'm more into that stuff, you know. I mean, so
Correct.
I think it's a great stress buster for me rather than watching any or consuming any OTT content or any TV show content. So yeah, I'm that kind of person.
I understand. So what about, let me give you a sport question then for this. Usain Bolt's last run has been some time. Do you still interact with that character, if I may say, or even for Michael Phelps, that matter? Are there more interactions apart from watching them both do their respective dashes perfectly?
No, not really, but
Right.
yeah, so not really.
I got the answer. Lokesh, your answer to it. Now you'll have to give me a non-sporting answer. Which is your favorite TV show?
Again, not a TV, big fan of TV, but yes, playing video games is definitely my favorite, stress buster. And Call of Duty franchise is the favorite title which I play. And again, in the terms of engagement, then there are a lot of content which is already available on, let's say, Instagram Reel or Facebook or YouTube, and watching all these big championships all across. So that's how my engagement limits to. Yeah.
Great. I'm an Arsenal fan, and I do keep a tab of Premier League, but it's not been a good time for us. Yet when I play FIFA, I really feel good with Arsenal. That's the only place I feel good with Arsenal. So while these rapid fire questions were just icebreakers, what it actually did, this session, it set the launchpad for our core discussion that we are going to do. The fact remains today, that the tentpole properties, entertainment, be it sports or scripted, once they go off air, there is very little engagement or interaction happening, unless they have a great merchandising business in the case of Disney or Star Wars or the shows that we have mentioned. So what we are trying to understand is that, can we increase the engagement while the property is not live? It can be a sports property, it can be a Saregama that Z has, which is a singing reality show, or it can be the esports that Lokesh and the team are working on. Similarly, for a publisher like Ishank, we would like to understand if gamification can be a part of inventory. So that's where the conversation will go today. And let's, without wasting any more time, let's jump into it. Let us know from the panelists what their views on gamification is when it comes to with respect to their respective business, and when it comes to engagement. Rahul, your answer to it. For your particular business, how do you see gamification?
I think, for us, we actually got into the business of gamifying offline card games, right? That Indians love to play, Rummy, right, Flash, and so on. So it's to our core, right? Take what you experience offline. In your case, you're talking about TV shows. For us, it's what you engage offline as a game. Take that online so you can play with anywhere. So gamification is allowing you to connect with anyone, anywhere, and enjoy a moment of connection over a game. So that's gamification. There's also a sporty side to it, which is you're trying to gain points and gamify something, but we don't get into that. We focus more on entertainment. Yeah.
Correct. Great. Thanks for this initial remark. Divya, your answer to it. How do you lead the gamification piece for Z? So what's your view when it comes to gamification, especially from the lenses of Z?
When I look at gamification, there are two. When we approach it in two ways. One is making our content interactive. Helping creating a communication with our viewer. So when the show is still going on, they are able to engage with the show, helping us keep get more of the user's time, and collect data so that we are able to personalize their experience, and so on and so forth. But also we're exploring opportunities where Z owns a lot of great IP.
Correct.
So we can always look at, we are looking at how we can, creating, those IP-based, IP-themed games as well. So whether it might be an older a TV show like even a Saas Bahu show that was very popular in the 90s, you can still go ahead and create a great game around it. And, the folks now can, relive the entire experience all over again. So so these are the two approaches, and this is how we are building our capabilities. Like,
Great answers. Thank you, Divya. Hishank, your view from the publisher point of view, how do you look at gamification?
Well, okay, so I'm someone who's from advertising background, but how I foresee it is, it's gamification is all about picking up the elements from the game. So see, I mean, it's basically as we are on a mission to revolutionize how millennial consume sports information.
Correct.
So I mean, see, I mean, adding elements of gamification. One of the elements would be competitiveness. So probably a leaderboard wherein users are rewarded, or they can see their progress bar on reading maximum or reading maximum articles on our website, and they are eventually being rewarded for the same, or probably fostering a community among their friends, or and we have always strived to bring associate cricket into limelight. So we do have video IPs. We have been official broadcaster for many of the associate cricketing events. So we can actually create something similar to what Divya said, an interactive program, probably a prediction wherein they can keep interacting while streaming the live video. I mean, that for an example, like if a bowler is bowling a ball, they can predict well in advance that if it is going to be an out or any given number of runs, and the same data can be used for personalized ads later on.
Correct. Great answers. Lokesh, you have been in a mission to establish esports and create athletes out of gamers. What role can gamification play in esports, according to you? We are talking about non-sporting, gamifying or using the mechanics for non-sporting moments.
So I think, yeah, so esports in itself a gamified version of physical activities or physical sports. So because I think the very good example for this is we have an Indian game which is called World Cricket Championship, which is again a game based on cricket. So that in itself is kind of a gamification of a traditional sport, which is cricket. Now beyond this, what we are doing, as a federation is, we obviously conduct a lot of these tournaments. So that is again, a kind of a extended gamification on a video game. And while that thing is happening, then obviously within the game, there is a lot of actually, because it's a digital product, it automatically gives you a lot of possibilities to create different kind of things. Right, I'm sure, while, the rest of the panel is talking about, leaderboards and, the more you play, you get some bonus points, the more you daily log in and sort of thing. But I think, in addition to this, because of this NFT and blockchain and the 3.0, there are a lot of opportunities which have opened up. Now, just like traditional sports, so we also have our esports athletes, esports heroes, or esports, I specifically talk from an India perspective. And so, take for example, we have, biggest of the esports players for a game called PUBG, which is now BGMI. So, there are organizations who are started creating NFTs around that, so they're, let's say, some kind of avatar for, if I may take an example for, let's say, Mortal, right? So somebody has created a NFT for, Mortal. Now, that is one part of it, wherein his, let's say, a face or his, full dress and all those things. But beyond this, whenever these esports athletes are playing, they would typically stream their gameplays online, and that is where typically, that particular content, just like a music or again, from a sports side of it, which again can be further converted into an NFT over a blockchain, and so you can still engage with that. Kind of your fans and listen. So that's actually, I think that has typically become a talk of the town. While there was a time when everybody was talking about esports, And now obviously, so NFTs and how, the esports, scope of work or ecosystem can be expanded using NFTs and things. But while I'm talking about esports from an India perspective, I think it is also important to understand, because largely people are on the panel and our audiences from interested into video games and gaming. So there is a large misunderstanding about esports in India. One very simple misunderstanding which exists is that if you're playing fantasy, if you're playing Team Puppy, Rummy, Poker, that's esports, or gaming or online gaming, that's esports. So that is something, we've been, Rahul is laughing, but I know, so he would agree to what I'm saying. So, because, that is not the case, I'm sure, so our industry is a very small industry, and we would, and definitely opportunities are immense. But I think it's important to kind of understand what is esports. And simply, if you're just simply playing a video game, let's say Candy Crush or Perils, or let's say even for that matter Ludo. Now Ludo is a multiplayer game, but it is not esports. There are only five genres of video game which fall into the category of esports. First-person shooter, MOBA, sports, fighting, and then we have fifth is the real-time strategy, and that's it. So, while let's say I don't want that, after this session, people start, including or start calling gamification also as an esports. So I just took that liberty of kind of, clarifying the definitions around with gamification, video games, esports, and fantasy themes for PNC.
Great. Ryan, why don't you take right where Lokesh ended? I mean, like, define gamification and then actually, share your views on how gamification can actually intensify the engagement that happens around intellectual properties.
Yeah, so for us, I think I'd go back to Rahul's definition in terms of that connection between users, but also the connection between the user and the rights owner. That's a lot of it for us, is identifying ways to create a two-way interaction there, where previously it was very much just a one-way interaction, right? So owners were distributing content, whatever that content may be, users were consuming it, and that was the extent of the relationship. And so we look at empowering rights owners with the ability to have a two-way conversation, two-way interaction with their end user, whoever that end user might be, through the lens of gamification. And gamification, I certainly would agree, would not be, in our case, esports. It would be more casual gamification with sometimes that competitive edge to it. So things like leaderboards, things like predictions, where you are competing against users who are all interested in the same content. You all start with a common denominator of interest, and that's what kind of fuels the community element around it. And then for us, for rights owners, it's all about empowering them with ways to better engage, better retain, and better monetize their users. And we look at that, doing that through the lens of gamification. So Divya mentioned capturing first-party data. That's huge, and a huge challenge for rights owners around the world, obviously particular to India as well. And then once you have that first-party data, what do you do with it? So you can make informed decisions downstream once you have this data on your customers, because they're interacting with these casual gamification mechanics that you've introduced. And then the second, third element to it is, if you have any seasonality to your business, whether you're a show, scripted or not, or a sport, there's going to be huge gaps throughout the year. And what do you do with your user? What do you do with your customer? How do you serve them during those gaps? Gamification can play a huge part there as well. And Lokesh touched on NFTs. That's a really interesting way that we're doing business in now, to extend that tail of engagement beyond the end of the formal season, whatever that is. And then you've all of a sudden got your users' attention from end of season to start of the next via these new gamification mechanics, whether that be NFTs or not.
Great. Thank you, Ryan, for explaining it and putting it more in context. Rahul, I'll move to you. Has gamification now become a very important part, when it comes to customer experience? Because we all know, because of the pandemic, platforms like Jungli had got a lot of incremental gamers, if I may say so, if Lokesh doesn't take offense now if I say gamers. But what's your view on this? Do you think it has actually become a great part of customer experience, and thus helping even retaining them, that spike that we had?
Yeah, for any business, I think it's straightforward. You can't move forward if you don't build engagement in your product. And gamification is a serious level of engagement. Very easy way to look at it is you either play against other players, you play against yourself, or you play against the computer. That's your mode of gaming, right? So in a product, you can either compete against other players, have a leaderboard of whatever value you want to bring to your product. Let's say you're an email service. You could gamify with number of emails you send in a day. Or you're an email service. You could gamify with number of replies you get in a day. You could get badges, right? We've all used products where you get badges for using the product a lot. And then if you start sharing and receiving friends, right? Refer a friend is a very strong gamification technique. Then your friend does something and they get something in the game, right? Or in this case, product, pardon me. But you turn the whole thing into a game where you compete for a prize. The prize is whether you're playing by yourself, like I said, single player, you're playing a competitive or cooperative, right, with friends. So I think gamification cannot be ignored. Plenty of books and materials out there, how they need to be imbued in your product. And it's something every business should adopt. We've done, I mean, we were in gaming, so for us, it was very straightforward. But I've seen a lot of companies pick that up. Brands we don't have to talk about maybe because they want to be competitive, but ultimately it's a strong aspect to take your business forward anytime. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Rahul. Divya, Z, as we mentioned, it has a lot of IPs that have been built over the years, and significant amount of investment goes in scripting it and then directing it and then presenting it on the television. But do you see a scope, for fans, for building fandom when it comes to these properties by using gamification?
Absolutely. I think, like I mentioned earlier as well, so a large part of our audience are consuming this content still on linear TV.
Correct.
And a lot of our non-scripted shows also have, user interaction built into the format. Like you have a music contest, you have audience voting for it, you have polls that get conducted around these shows. So I think with gamification, we try to bring in, making that experience really seamless, so that you're watching it on your phone and you basically, as the person is singing, you tap on their face and you're casting your vote for them, and making that whole interaction with your content extremely seamless. And also, if they're watching it on linear TV and they're able to experience a dual screen, like so you're watching it on linear TV and you're playing with your phone, based on, they are asking some question, you're answering on your phone. So it's basically connecting your linear and digital screens with gamification. So yes, there's definitely a lot of opportunity when it comes to, so by doing these, I'm keeping my audience engaged. I'm getting them back to the platform, and I think that there's huge benefit when it comes to doing this.
Great. Hisham, would like to know from you, I mean, like we have heard about the benefits of gamification, but does it add as a value for the clients you must be meeting, since you deal with a lot of advertisers? What are their view on this entire part? Do you think gamification can actually become a good value-added offering to them?
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm a strong believer that content and gamification goes hand in hand. I mean, they both needs to be highly engaging in order to get the user glued. And it is one of the best way to collect data. And there are a lot of opportunities available as a publisher. I mean, or as an advertiser. I mean, for an example, you can do something like trivias. You can do quizzes, trivias to collect data, to engage with your audience, to understand them better, in order to show them personalized ads. Then third thing would be, I mean, we are working with a lot of ex-cricketers like Mohammad Azharuddin and Wasim Jaffer and some big names.
Correct.
So we are closely working with them. They have always been on our panelists. So we are working on a module right now. We have added a gamification element to it, wherein an end user can actually click a picture with their 3D model, and which can be directly shared on their social media. So this is something which actually sharing something on social media, I mean, it actually just explosively, it just explodes the reach. So yeah, I mean, they get a wider reach. My advertiser get a wider reach while we implement gamification elements to our content.
Correct. That's great. The more the user spends time, the more the average revenue per user. And the idea is to have actually more people spending more time. It also gives you a competitive advantage as they don't go to your rivals. Brilliant answer, Sishank. Ryan, you have been helping right owners, the IP owners, use gamification as an integral part of their engagement strategy. Can you summarize for us your interactions with the Indian right owners and how they are different from say the interactions Game On is doing in California or the US? What I wanted to understand, if India is replicating what happened in the West when it comes to gamification.
I think the drivers, the motivations of the rights owners are the same. And okay. I mentioned those, right? Capturing first party data, better engaging, better retaining, better monetizing your audience. Those are pretty universal across anyone who has and distributes content. Where we see a bit of a difference is in the market from a user standpoint. So users in the Indian market are far more willing and excited to engage in casual mobile games and do so in a way that is pretty rabid. And so I think the goal of better engaging, better retaining, better monetizing their audiences is accomplished far quicker by introducing gamification mechanics within the Indian market, because the users are so attracted to it. And then the other key difference that we've seen is when it comes to monetization, the introduction of ads is something that will pretty quickly turn off a user in the West, whereas in the Indian market, it's very common and users are very willing to accept that sort of form of currency with the publisher in order to engage with whatever the content is. And so that's another thing that we've recognized, that it's a very quick way to monetization for the rights owner, is introducing ads, obviously in an authentic and respectful way, but something the user base will not be turned off on. You won't see a lot of churn by introducing ads within a mobile game experience in India versus in the US market, where the users are a little bit more picky and won't accept ads within the experience quite as readily.
Great, thanks, Ryan. I'll come back to you, but before that, we are in the last segment of our discussion today, and I would like to call this segment, the promises and perils of gamification. So what we are essentially discussing is the scope of adding mechanics into non-sport environments and how it can help us in creating a fandom, get better engagement, as already mentioned. I would like to know from each one of you, I mean, where do you see the scope of using gamification for your benefits beyond the point that you have already mentioned? And also, if you would quickly summarize on the promises and perils of gamification, what it would be. Rahul, starting with you.
You always ask hard questions and you put me first, man. There's no time to think. Okay, fair. Here's the deal. Gamification is helpful, we all understand, to increase engagement, but here's where it falls apart. If you gamify too much, you will find or create a sect of users who only want to play the game, and you will alienate other people. In fact, if you gamify too much, you will complicate your product and people will not understand what your product is there to do. And they'll just be instead collecting tickets or, referring friends and trying to get the points or trying to get the cash back and all that other stuff that rolls with it, right? It's not cool. Nothing against, I have to say this example now, like nothing against Google Pay, but Google Pay, it ruined it, with their whole ticket collection thing. If you ever try to do UPI, they give you these tickets, these points, and they're very difficult to understand that game. Extremely difficult, right? Yeah. It's not a simple thing. And what is it? It's a payment app, right? But people were sending me 10 rupees just so they could get like the ticket and then asking me to send the money back. And that was over gamification, correct? And it's unnecessary. Yeah, you use the product, but did you really use the product? So anyways, that's the complicated peril side of things. It will turn people off. People won't use it. It all goes down the drain, I think, from that side. The good side, if you can take your achievements in the gamified product and bring that to other products. If you earn points in Google Pay and you could use those points on, I'm making it up again, on Times Internet products, because there is something you did here that you can use value here, you can really drive strong engagement. And this is true for IPs, this is true for businesses, right? So take your achievements with you where you go. The gamification allows that because it tracks your score, for example, it tracks your activity, right? As part of gamifying things. So there's the promise side of it as well.
Great. For my next question, which would be the last question, I will go to Rahul last. Divya, your take on it. I mean, the promises and perils of gamification, to summarize it.
I think from a benefit or a promise standpoint, like I had mentioned earlier again, it's about actually knowing my user beyond just the demographic of him, or, I know that person A is 16 years old, he's a boy, but if I'm able to get more, gamification is going to help me get more data about this boy, flesh out his entire personality. This definitely is going to help me personalize the content that he sees on my platform. And I think that recommendation on OTTs become the key right now with the amount of content that's available and everybody going through so much decision fatigue. You just don't know what to watch. And with me getting to know the person, I'm able to really give him the kind of content that he actually likes. And that definitely is a huge benefit. And the engagement, retention, monetization, it all just falls in place after that. But again, there is a challenge. So my core offering is video viewing. I am getting my user there to watch content. The viewing experience, the video experience is my core benefit. The gamification part of it should not really hinder with that process. It should organically flow into the content, something very similar to what Rahul was mentioning about over gamification or complicating the entire process. And I don't want it to hinder. Like, I'm not going to be like when he's watching a movie and there's a cliffhanger and I put a pop-up there, answer what this is. And that's going to piss me off. As a user, that's going to piss me off. So it's very important to maintain that balance of building gamification that organically flows into the show format itself.
Correct.
So I think finding that balance is definitely going to be a challenge. Yeah.
Great answer, Divya. Thank you. Hishank, your take on it, the promises and perils of gamification in context to what you have been doing as a publisher.
Oh, well, okay. So there's more to the business, I mean, it's like, I mean, I really want my user to know what value I can add to their lives. I mean, apart from just engaging them with the gamified elements, by probably creating a knowledge base, I mean, because there's more to cricket. I'm just talking in aspect of a cricket publisher. So there's more to cricket. I mean, probably they could learn more about better nutrition, about better skills, which can eventually help them evolve as a better player or a better sports person. I mean, because they are the audience who are on my platform in order to consume the cricket data. They are the cricket fans, they are cricket lovers. They are some way closely related or associated to this game. So I would prefer creating a knowledge base which can add value to their day-to-day lives rather than just getting them onto working on rewards and points and collecting tokens.
Correct.
So we are working closely on adding value to their day-to-day lives.
Adding value with gamification, a great concept. Lokesh, your answer to it. I mean, you have already mentioned, but can you briefly summarize for us, how do you, from esports point of view and from IP point of view, what's the promises and perils of gamification?
Yeah, we'll do the sound check. 3, 2, 1. Huh?
You're perfect.
Voice, yeah,
yes.
You're perfect. Okay, so
yes.
This time is perfect. Yeah, thank you. So answering to your question, see, most of the things the panel has already kind of touched upon. But typically, one very important point which Divya mentioned is that it's very important to understand your consumer. one kind of gamification will not apply for all. You can't just come up with one gamification package and then expect, people to kind of, follow it and then keep your, let's say, audience or your TG engaged with it. So unfortunately, in India, whatever we are seeing, it's, and during the discussion, you mentioned that, typically, we typically follow whatever happens in America. Right. So we just cut, copy, paste, and say it in, bring it in India and say, "Oh, America mein chala tha, to it will run in India too." So I think those times have gone. India today is a very strong country. We should not look upon, let's say, West or other set of countries what they are doing. We should come up with our own innovative ways and mechanisms to do whatever we want. I'm not even restricting this statement to, let's say, only gamification. I would also want to extend this to, let's say, video games, or even our startups and everything. One of the very easiest thing which typically we see in our pitches is this thing was happening in US and this thing, or Europe, and this will work in India. And most of us also typically, we kind of follow that also, and we get too overwhelmed by, acha, this was happening in US, I'm sure that, India will listen. But that's not the case today. Imagine Kellogg's coming in India with those cereals and I don't know what, I never eat those things. For me, my uttapam or, aloo ka paratha still solves my purpose, and I relish that. So that exactly is something which we should actually look at India today. Gone were the days, again, I'm going to quote unquote, gone were the days where India used to follow, what was happening in US and Europe. We should, and today, because we are capable enough, we were always capable. It's just that, we as Indians never had confidence on ourselves. We always, were looking upon some sort of a benchmarks. Okay, so has it been done somewhere? But I think the whole ecosystem in the terms of whatever activities we are doing is very conducive today.
Correct.
We should definitely take, hold our heads high and go out in the world, say that, we are from India, and people have started, that change. I've personally seen that change.
Correct.
Right. And that's the reason I'm very bullish about this thing. So similarly, when we talk about gamification, unfortunately, specifically talking from a Perils perspective, unfortunately, what we are seeing is that same kind of a gamification is typically used by all the platforms or all the products. So that is where typically, for me, I'm a very heavy user of Paytm. They send me badges and everything. If those badges and everything don't even, I am not even interested. I don't even go to that tab wherein I say, what are the benefits and other thing. So it's the same kind of a thing. Similarly, when you look at, let's say, some other kind of a platform, same kind of a gamification is happening. So what, as a product owner or as IP owners, what we should look at is we should create new innovative ways to do that. Base logic is, see, gamification, the base reason why everybody wants to look at gamification is to engage better. See, there's a difference. It's not an engagement tool, because engagement anyway is you're doing with that particular product or IP. Engagement is happening. What we are doing gamification is for the fact that you want to increase your engagement or better that engagement which is already happening. And when, let's say, somebody is not using your product or IP, so he still has something to go back to that particular product or IP and remember, okay, so this was, in our case, obviously, let's say this was FIFA, okay, so Manchester. And that is how I know these, team names or the franchise, right? Otherwise, I'm not a big sports fan. So otherwise, I might have not even known who Manchester is, who Messi is, or who, all these players are, right? So, but because I'm, again, getting connected via this video game, and hence I know these teams and things like that. But again, my request and suggestion to everybody who wants to look at gamification is that please ensure that. Otherwise, there's no point. You'll spend monies, you'll waste a lot of time, resources. But ultimately, and unfortunately, one very interesting thing which we have seen while this gamification is being done, there is no feedback mechanism. Right. So while you are looking at improving the engagement with your fans, there has to be a feedback mechanism also. No? Did your user actually enjoy that particular gamification part of your IP or a product or not?
Correct. And the feedback can probably be understood by the engagement analysis. I'm sure there are various tools. Great points, Lokesh. You said it should be contextualized. You can think global, but you'll have to act local. And no wonder, I mean, even a McDonald's sends aloo peti in India, so that's localization to the core. Ryan, over to you. I'll now put you under the spotlight. You have heard the perils and you have also heard the promises. How can we use this gamification opportunity that it presents at the same time, to solve the problems that each one of them have mentioned? And I know it's a long question, but I'll give you exactly 120 seconds maybe to answer it.
Geez, now I know how Rahul feels. Put on the spot here. I I think I'll just sort of combine everyone's answers. I think it's very easy to over gamify, which will ultimately be a detriment to you, the rights owner, and the user. It's also very easy to under gamify and not leverage these tools in a way that drives your business. And so I think the sweet spot is right in the middle. We call it depth through simplicity. Introduce valuable gamified products that have depth but have simple mechanics and don't overwhelm the user and don't distract from the actual core product, like Rahul was saying, like Divya was saying. So depth through simplicity, find that sweet spot in the middle is what I would say as an answer.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. This is my last question, and as I promised, I'll not go to Rahul first. Let us end by throwing a dice and predicting a little bit of the future. Say from 3 years from today, we sit again in a similar setup where we wish good morning to Rahul and good afternoon to Lokesh, and we discuss gamification. What I have learned so far, in this session, my answer to this question, 3 years from now, we are discussing gamification. What should be the title? Answering it first for me, it would be how gamification changed the engagement game. That is something I would like to discuss 3 years from now. But what would your answer be? 3 years from now, we are discussing gamification in a panel discussion. What should be the topic? Divya, with you.
Okay, so I'm on the spot right now.
Yes.
Okay, so I think 3 years from now, we will, at least what I would be looking at is to see how we can provide a personalized gamification experience. Taking from what Lokesh had mentioned, badges do not make sense to him. It's not going to help him. So how can we provide a personalized gamification experience? And in a sense, how am I going to personify my product that the user can befriend, and hence they are able to have a real interaction with my product via personalizing gamification. So I think I'll be very interested to know how products from across industries are able to personalize the gamification experience.
Great. Personalizing the gamification experience. That's the topic from Divya 3 years from now. I'll definitely like to moderate that too. Lokesh, your answer? I mean, what the title should be if we are discussing it 3 years from now?
I think title is good, but obviously one of the things which we would be discussing there, other than the badges and everything, would be that augmented reality. That is something which I'm very confident that within 3 years we would have augmented reality kind of engagement built in. Yeah.
Great. Augmented reality in gamification. His topic for 3 years from now. Wow, brilliant. Hishank, your answer to it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, with the introduction of 5G, Metaverse, Web 3.0, a smart device in almost all the hands will undoubtedly going to grow this space. So definitely, I mean, I agree to Lokesh. We will be talking about AR and VR and personalized ads. Then we will be talking about feedbacks to the end user. I mean, not just feedback to the publisher or to the advertiser, but feedback to the end user too.
Correct.
To help them improve or to achieve or track their goals, like probably Fitbit is doing it in their day-to-day life. Probably for a sales team or for me, for an example, I can probably use it being a publisher. I mean, between my content team, probably creating a competition among my content writers. I mean that whose content is more engaging or so
great.
More of that.
Gamification for engagement. Thank you, Hishank. Ryan, your answer to it. 3 years from now, if we were to discuss in a panel discussion gamification, what should be the title?
I'm gonna go with everything is a game.
Everything is a game. Wow.
Everything is a game. And I think the reason that comes to mind is because I think eventually we'll get to a point where everyone who owns, distributes content in some capacity or has an audience or user base will look to gamify their platform in some form or another.
Right.
And the reason for that is everything we've discussed here, right? Games ultimately tap into human motivations that are deeper than what you can tap into without games. The idea of discovering something new or progressing through different levels. These are just deep intrinsic motivations that we have. And so I think layering these mechanics and tapping into these motivations across, like Divya said, cross industries will just start to be more and more ubiquitous. So I think 3 years from now, everything will be a game.
Correct. We will sign off with Rahul. Now, Rahul, over to you.
Fair enough. As I was saying that I thought about it, so I have a good one, which is gamification. Have we overdone it?
Great. Gamification, have you overdone it? Wow, from 3 years, we'll go on this journey from doing it to overdoing it. That's a great note to end. Thank you very much, everyone. I mean, I had a very, very informative session, and I'm sure all of our viewers have. So thank you, Rahul, thank you, Divya, thanks Lokesh, thanks Ishank, and thanks Ryan for joining us here today. That was my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.